So in the last video, I showed you how you can use Google Cloud Services to set up an SSH tunnel and use that with Airbyte. But today, I'm going to show you how you can do the exact same thing using AWS. So as you can see on the screen here, I am in my EC2 dashboard. What I'm gonna go ahead and do is click here where it says launch instance. In here, I'm just gonna give it a name. So I'm gonna name it Airbyte SSH. I'm gonna leave the OS image as the Amazon Linux image. For the instance type, I'm just gonna go ahead and use the free tier. Just for testing purposes, I don't really need a lot of resources, but obviously you can choose what's necessary and required in your specific situation. Down here, and this is the most important part, is going to be the key pair login. So this is actually going to be the key that we need to generate and the key that we're going to supply to Airbyte when we want to set up that SSH tunnel. So I'm gonna go to the right-hand side and create a new key pair. I'm gonna name this Airbyte _SSH. I'm gonna leave the key pair type as RSA, and I'm gonna leave this in a PEM key file format. I'm gonna go ahead and create the key pair, and it's gonna go ahead and download that for me. And remember where it gets downloaded, because that's gonna come up in the next couple steps after we've created this instance. Down here in the network settings, I'm pretty much going to leave everything default. I'm gonna create a new security group down here. And what is most important here, but it is already checked for me, is to allow SSH traffic from, and then on the right-hand side, I have selected anywhere. You can choose, a custom one, or you can select just your IP. After that's done, if you need to, you can configure storage. Again, for this demo, I'm not going to do that. Once you're done there, I'm going to go to the right-hand side and click Launch Instance. All right, so it successfully launched the instance. I'm going to go ahead and click into it real quick, and I'm going to show you some of the necessary information we need. So if I go ahead and click this instance ID, I'm going to be in the instance summary. And the one thing we do need is going to be this auto-assigned IP address, which is the public IP address. We don't need any of the private IPs or anything like that. The two main pieces of information we need in the summary is going to be the instance ID as well as the auto-assigned or just the public IP. So make sure we note those down before we move on to the next steps. So now that we have all of our information from the instance summary, I'm going to go up here to the connect button, click that, and it's going to give us a couple of options. We're going to stay on the SSH client side, and it tells us to open an SSH client and locate our private key file. If you remember, we downloaded that PEM file when we were creating our instance, so make sure you know where that is in your local machine. We don't necessarily need to do the third command because this is just a demo, but if you don't need your key or don't want your key to be publicly viewable, then you want to make sure that you run this command here. But let's go ahead and test to make sure that we can actually connect to our instance via SSH. Let's copy this command here that they give us, which is essentially using the PEM key that we created. It's showing us the username that we're going to log into, and this is going to be very important when we get into the Airbyte UI, and then this is going to be our instance host name that we are connecting to. So let's go ahead and copy this. I'm gonna go into iTerm. I'm gonna go ahead and paste this, and I'm going to hit enter. It's gonna ask us if we wanna continue connecting. I'm gonna say yes, and there we go. I am inside of our instance or our VM. I'm gonna go ahead and just go into the SSH, if I can type, SSH folder. I'm going to cat the authorized keys, and you can see that this is the key, the Airbyte SSH key. This is the one we just created when this instance was made and what is allowing us to connect to this. So now we're going to take the key we created and give it to Airbyte in order for us to have an SSH tunnel from Airbyte to our Bastion server in AWS over to our Postgres database. Obviously, we're going to need the contents of the key. So the one thing I'm going to do is going to run cat Airbyte _SSH.PEM, and that's going to give me the contents of the actual file itself. And this is our key. So I'm going to go ahead and copy all of this, and we're going to head into the Airbyte UI now to set up our Postgres source with SSH. Cool. So I'm in Airbyte now. I'm going to go over to new connection. We're going to set up a new source, and like I said, we're going to use Postgres. Let me go ahead and rename this to Postgres SSH, so that way I know which one this is. And I'm going to go ahead and fill out my information. All right, so now we're down into the security section. Again, I'm going to leave the SSL mode to require, and the SSH tunnel method is what we're going to do. Since we created a key pair, we'll use the SSH key authentication. And this is where we're going to fill in the information that we found before. So we're going to need the server host for our SSH tunnel. We're going to leave the connection port to 22 since that's default, our login, and then the private key. Since we just copied the private key, let me go ahead and actually copy that again. So let me go back there. I'm going to go ahead and paste my private key into the private key section. Our login username was found before back here when we SSH'd into our machine initially, which is going to be EC2-user, and then as default. When you launch an instance, you can obviously change that to be a custom username if you wish. And then the tunnel jump server host. So we're going to need the IP address of our instance. If we go back over to the instance here, you're going to see in the summary the public IP. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that, paste that here. I'm going to change this to xmin and then set up our source. All right, so all connections have passed. So let me just set up our existing BigQuery destination that I have and let it do its thing. Okay, I will just quickly run through. I want all these tables. I'm going to change these to full refresh overwrite plus deduped because that is what I prefer. I'm going to click next. I'm going to change this to a manual sync, destination defined. We like the connection name. I will go ahead and set up the connection. Where in this page, I'm going to click sync now, let it run and move data. And it's going to be using the SSH tunnel to connect to Postgres and then send that off into BigQuery. And we can see that it's actually active right now. If we head over back to our instance summary and we go over to monitoring, you can see that we have an increase in activity here. If I refresh this again, you'll see this just keeps climbing. So let's head back over, let it do its thing, and then check back in once the sync is done. All right, so our sync succeeded. If we head back over to our instance summary in the monitoring tab, I refresh this. Go back. You can see that our CPU usage went up, so it successfully used our AWS server to use as an SSH tunnel with Airbyte over to Postgres. So that's how you set up SSH within AWS to use with Airbyte. If you have any questions, as always, leave them down in the comments section below, and we'll see you on the next one.